Hi, everyone, and a warm welcome back to the Data for Peace conference. My name is Angelica Lindvis McGowan, and I'm going to be the room host here in room A for the next couple of hours. We have a really tight schedule, so I'm going to hand over to the first panel right away. And this is a panel on data collection in the context of insecurity, challenges, limitations, and innovations for conflict prevention in the Sahel. Moderating is Madi Ibrahim Kante. Madi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome for this session. I started to say good afternoon, distinguished colleague, researcher, practitioner, and participant for this session. On behalf of Sahel Academy for Peace and Security Studies, that is a think tank based in Mali, work on Sahel and West Africa. I would like to thank the organizers of the Data for Peace conference for provide us with this opportunity to discuss one of the most pressing challenge facing the Sahel today, how to provide reliable data in context marked by insecurity, uncertainty, and rapid social political transformation in this region of West Africa, in Central Sahel, especially in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The Sahel is currently undergoing profound change. Over the past decade, the region has experienced a combination of security crisis, political transformation, population displacement, climate-related pressure, and growing also competition over natural resources in this area. Plus that we have also armed group, terrorist group in this area moved from country to another country with expand uh, their influence in some area, even if we can say sometime control some area in this country, local area especially. Inside the context, data is no longer simple technical resource. It has become a strategic tool. Reliable information is essential for understanding conflict dynamic, anticipating risk, information, informing public policy, supporting human actions, and also early warning and conflict prevention mechanism. So I think that is the important things of data in this area. Yet, collecting reliable data in the Sahel remaining extremely challenge for not for just a researcher, even for organization who want to have good data and reliable data. Researcher and the strong among local population, political sensitive, misinformation, and also disinformation, weak statistical infrastructure, the difficult of verifying the information that we have in this area. I think all of this situation is a challenge for this environment in Sahel. So this challenge raise important question that I can ask this question. It will be the question, the intervention. It will be answer for those case question. How can a researcher produce reliable evidence in fragile and conflict affected setting? How can local knowledge be integrated into data collected and analyzed process? What methodology are best to adapt for this context to access this data with the correct information? And also, how can data transform into the practical tools for early warning and conflict prevention. So, for today, our panel set to address this question from complementary perspectives because we have a different profile that we have today who can discuss. The first one, it will be Dr. Usman Keita, who just finished with his PhD dissertation in this context, so he can explain how his research on the ground was, which difficult phase when he has this uh, dissertation conducted on the ground. Secondly, it will be Professor Mariam Sidibe. She is on the ground for the research. She also coordinate different research project on the ground. Also, she will give us from this perspective as a coordinator, as who is responsible for different projects in the Sahel. After that, we will have as said speaker. It will be Professor Abdul, who is vice dean of the faculty, and also he coordinates. He has different projects on the Sahel. So also he worked on different topic, especially disinformation and data in the Sahel. I think also his experience it will be important for us to listen him. Professor Ali Tunkara, sociology, and on the same time, he's the director of a center that we call the 4C4S. In French, it's the CAT-S. So he has also different research project in the Sahel in different countries on the same time, and who work directly with the institutions that we call in the Sahel ONEP. ONEP is the organization who work on uh, early warning for prevention conflict in the Sahel. I think we will have four panelists who will talk to us about the different situation, challenge, and difficulty in the Sahel. As for me, the future of conflict prevention in the Sahel will depend not only on the political and security response, but also on our collective ability generated credible, inclusive, and context-sensitive knowledge that we will collect on the data. I will start by Dr. Usman Keita. I think you can open your mic and you have flow, Dr. Usman.
Thank you, Madi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. My presentation focused on the challenge of producing reliable data in insecure environment based on my doctoral research on migration and local development in Kurungoto, Mali. Through this full experience, I will share some of the practical, methodological, and ethical challenge and counter while conducting research in a fragile context, as well as with strategic news to answer data reliability. The central question of this research was simple but challenging. How can we produce reliable data in a context characterized by insecurity, uncertainty, and limited institutional capacity? My doctoral study examined the contribution of migrants to local socio-economic development in Kurunkoto, a rural municipality in Western Mali. where research was conducted between 2022 and 2024 and involved fieldwork in three interconnected locations, Kounikoto, Bamako, and Paris. The objective was not only to study migration, but also to understand how reliable evidence can be generated in fragile environments. True, Kounikoto has not experienced direct terrorist attack. It is located with a broader regional environment affected by insecurity. Since 2012, the expansion of army group across Mali has transformed the research environment. People have become more cautious when sharing information, especially regarding mobility, finance, and social network. This climate of often create what I call a culture of silence, where individuals hesitate to speak openly because they fear surveillance, misunderstanding for potential recuperation. As researchers, we must therefore adapt our method and pay close attention to confidentiality and truth building. One of the major difficulties was the limited availability of reliable official data, national statistics, administrative report, and development document provide news information, but they often fail to capture the reality of migration. For example, official sources rarely document informal investment by migrant, local conflict around development project, or the social impact of migration. As a result, researchers must often generate their own primary data through extensive fieldwork. The reality make methodological rigor when more important. To address this challenge, I added a mixed method and multiple sheets approach inspired by George Marquis. We research combined quantitative survey, qualitative interview, and participant observation. I conduct questionnaire with 59 respondents, more than 70 semi-structured interview, and approximately 30 months of field immersion. Using multiple methods along me to cross-check information and reduce the risk associated with relying of a single source. This triangulation was essential for improved data quality. Several major challenges emerged during field work. First, fear and silence. Many respondents were reluctant to discuss migration, route, financial transfer, or personal experience. Second, mobility constraint. Some infrastructure and community were difficult to access due to poor road and security concerns. Their local tension surrounding development projects, something create mistrust along stakeholder. Finally, researchers working workers in fragile contexts are always exposed to potential security risks, including interaction with informal network or actors operating in sensitive environments. My position as a researcher from the region creates both advantage and challenge. On the positive side, cultural proximity facilitates access to local network and encourage trust among respondents. Set language, social code, and local language help me understand subtle dynamic that may not be visible to an external researcher. However, this proximity also creates methodological challenge. Researchers must constantly maintain critical distance and become to closely identify with the community they are studying. Balancing truth and objectivity is one of the most difficult aspects of field research in fragile setting. To improve data reliability, several strategies were adopted. The first was trust building those local network and community intermediary. The second was systematic triangulation, comparing information, collect truth, interview, survey, observation, and document. The invested significant time in primary field immersion before beginning formal data collection. Finally, researcher tools were continuously adapted according to security conditions and local sensitivity. Reliability is not achieved through a single technique. It results from a continuous process of verification and adaptation. Several lessons emerge from this experience. First, flexibility is essential. Researcher design must adapt to challenging reality on the ground. Second, silence itself is valuable data, hesitation, refusal, and contradiction often reveal important social dynamic. The term murder, building trust, require that patience and long-term engagement. Finally, local innovation is crucial. Standard methodology often need to be adapted to local reality, cultural norm, and security constraints. Producing data is a fragile environment require both scientific rigor and resilience. In conclusion, collecting data is fragile and insecure context is far more than technical exercise. It involves navigating complex practical, social, ethical, and security challenges. Despite this difficulty, reliable data can be produced through methodological triangulation, strong community engagement, and continuous adaptation. The key message I would like to leave with you is that local methodological innovation is not a limitation. It is an essential resource for improved research, informing policy, and strengthening conflict prevention effort in the Sahel. Thank you for attention. I look forward to the discuss and would be happy to answer any question regarding the methodological fieldwork experience or broader implication for research and peace building in fragile context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usman, for this presentation. I think our participants can understand our English because we are from central francophone area. So our English is not like a French because it's different. Okay. Thank you again, Usman, for this presentation. I think we'll move directly even you extend your minutes. So I will be a little bit with Professor Sogodogo and Professor Mariam, to limited in 7 minutes that we need to have on the end the little bit time for discuss. Another thing that I can add here, if you have a presentation in PowerPoint, you can share with us and to be on the screen and continue to present. For dear Angelica, I think we will send to you our presentation after because all of them they have a presentation, so we will send to you and then you can share with the participant and the colleague in your department. Professor Mariam, you have follow.
Thank you very much, Madi. Hi, everybody. I'm also very sorry for my English. I don't know if you can understand what I want to say today, but Mari, you can share my PowerPoint with all participants if they want to learn what I want to say today. Sorry for this English. Today, my presentation is based to research experience and focus on how research can continue to produce useful knowledge despite growing insecurity and institutional fragility. The Sahel is currently facing multiple and interconnected crises: armed violence, climate change, forced displacing, demographic growth, and government challenge are resetting society across the region. In such a context, research becomes more than academic exercise. Okay. It provided evidence that help policymakers, practitioners, and community understand local reality and develop informed response. Reliable research is essential for anticipating crisis risk and supporting conflict prevention efforts. Next slide, Madi, please. Sahel research environment. Here, connecting research in Sahel requires understanding its unique characteristic. The region is marked by porous borders, strong population mobility, ethnic and cultural diversity, and vast geographic space that are often difficult to access. To talk about security and challenge access, security constraints are among the most significant obstacles facing research. Many areas are classified as high-risk zones due to armed attacks, criminal activities, or military operations. Travel restrictions often limit access to community, making data collection more difficult. Research must be before balanced scientific objective with personal safety and ethical responsibilities. Building trust fragility context. Trust is one of the most valuable resources in field research. In conflict-affected environment, people may fear speaking openly because of insecurity, political sensibilities, and previous negative experience. Building trust requires patience, transparency, cultural sensibility, and sustained engagement with community. Traditional research methods often need to be adapted in fragile contexts. Semi-structural interview and allow flexibility with many focus. Focus group help capture collective perception and community dynamic. Direct observation provides valuable insight into everyday reality. Most important research must remain flexibility and ready to adjust that method according to challenging secure maintenance. Understanding data reliability. One of the main concerns in crisis environment in the reliability of information. Rumors, misinformation, and fragmented sources can discover reality. To address this challenge, triangulation becomes essential. By comparing interview, observation, official documents, and community perception, research can validate finding and reduce potential biases. Knowledge is a crucial asset of understanding a complex environment. Community leader, pastoral network, farmer association, and civil society organization often possess information that is not ever through official challenge. Marie slice number 9, ethnic and protection. Research in fragile setting raises important concern. Protecting response is always a priority. Research must ensure confidentiality, secure data storage, and informed consent. At the same time, research themselves make risk and require approximate security measures. Governance local under pressure. Local government structures are often under significant pressure. Institutional fragmentation, overlapping mandates, and limited resources to reduce effectiveness of public institutions. Where coordination becomes different actors can create governance gaps that affect security and service delivery. Understanding this governance dynamic is essential to intercept local reality. Despite this challenge, community actors continue to play a vital role. Civil society organizations, religious leaders, young groups, and women associations often contribute to mediation and society cohesion. Their involvement is particularly important. Formal institutions have limited research. Research shall play whose attention sees local mechanisms of resilience. Tu peux venir directement à 16.
Next.
16, 15.
Next slide. This one?
No, number 15.
Madi, go ahead. Next slide again. Maybe this one, no?
Again. I have 2 minutes. Hello? Madi, I want to conclude. I have 1 minute. To conclude, research has become strategic necessity in today's Sahel. As some international actors reduced their presence, research under crazily contribute to observation, analysis, and learning, and political development and policy development. Research help make visible that is often invisible, documents local realities, and support evidence-based decision making. Thank you. I think I finished my time.
Thank you, Professor Mariam, for this presentation. As I said now, also we'll share with them our presentation. So we'll move directly to Professor Abdul Togodogo. The floor for you.
Thank you, Madi. Thank you, everyone. I hope you can share my presentation with everyone. As announced by Dr. Madi, my presentation is focused on the misinformation, the link between data and misinformation in scientific research in the Sahel. Next slide. The Sahel is an area of information war. Why? Because from the last decade, behind the conflict among the government and terrorist group, there are another conflict. This conflict is a kind of competition among big power in the Sahel. And in this conflict, these two conflicts, all actors are mobilizing information to sometimes promote their own version, calling here the narrative, and sometimes they are mobilizing social network to build some kind of legitimacy that make the research so complicated, because the scholar, researchers are sometimes looking as some kind of agent working sometimes for own vision or maybe another vision that complicated the access to field in the Sahel area those days. That's why I'm trying to talk and discuss with you this morning. Wait. Data manipulation come in this context. In the Sahel area, it's difficult now to work basing on the classic methodology, because those who are working in sociology, anthropology, maybe political science, we like immersion, we like observation, we like to live with people, to understand their view, to discuss many times with them, to make sense of what they are doing, what the sense they are giving to their own action, what their strategy. You know, some kind of knowledge is difficult to be highlighting by your simple maybe data collection. It needs some time, some important time, some state in the field. That's becoming difficult because of the conflict. The conflict make it's so difficult for local researcher and international researcher to stay long time with people in some area. That's why the data look like compromising those days. It challenged our methodology. We need to improve our practice, to do things differently, but to stay focused on the available data, how to produce available data in those contexts. As my colleague Mariam and Usman already talked about it. That's the key. The impact, this situation is impacting maybe the predicting or maybe the performance and the reliability of scientific knowledge those days. How we can trust our data, even the participants in the research are sometimes under trouble. They sometimes, as you can observe by yourself, they maintain or they retain some information. Sometimes they are not going through of the idea. They try sometimes to correlate with their speech to maybe it may be sometimes the government opinion, or sometimes the terrorist group opinion, or maybe if they are working for international organization, they are trying to be in the same line of these international organizations opinions, because people care. They care about some repression, or systematically those days all our interlocutors want to be want the data collected to be anonymous, because they don't want to see their opinions discussing or maybe sharing even for international community or even local community. The researchers are coming slowly and progressively. It kind of maybe trouble for local peoples. With them, he are trying to discussing and maybe emphasize some situation to produce knowledge. Maybe next slide, well, thank you, Madi. The instability of state, it's compromising the research, because those days, the truth is becoming a problem, and manipulation of information, if I can say that, polarizing opinions. You are supporting one party, or you are against this party. So it's some kind of situation complicated, who also push everyone and to local people that are pushing to support one government or terrorist group. That's complicated to produce some kind of knowledge in this kind of context. The government himself have more difficulty those days, because sometimes some information sharing by some authorities are not also reliable, and it make difficult for people to make the difference between the truth and the lie. And the opinion of the people are sometimes basing on those views, because for example, who can say those days if the government is in control or not of this village or not? Sometimes you can in the communique of the government, the government is really basing in this area. We are controlling this area. We are doing these activities, and you can at the same time you can see some video or maybe pictures coming from terrorist group who are telling you we are in control of this area. We are doing this thing. It's difficult. Misinformation is complicated. Even the government legitimities, the government strategies to govern, to rule the society, but it also complicated the researchers' work. Maybe next slide, Madi. Well, our challenge is that as a researcher, we have to continue to produce knowledge, because we already know, as Mariam say it, to build a a politics, we need a knowledge. Without knowledge, it will be difficult to build relevant policies to maybe to solve social problems, to solve development problems, to try to build peace. All those activities need real knowledge. As researchers, we have to think differently. We have to maybe to imagine a new strategies of knowledge production, but we have to keep in mind, without some space access, it will be really difficult, because those, I'm not maybe a fan of social network, but it's coming a way to keep in contact with peoples around the world, even in the local village, so far sometimes to the capital. It's becoming the way to do some interviews, to keep in touch, to stay listening with people in the WhatsApp group, Facebook, and so on. I mean, those can be a new way to keep some some kind of knowledge production. Thank you for everyone. I know I have just 7 minutes. I already spent that. I'm so sorry, but we can discuss. I'm very glad to keep discussing with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sogodogo. I didn't see Professor Ali Tunkara. Maybe he has a difficulty to join us today. So just before to give you the question, if you have the contribution or the comment on this session, I want just to say, when we look at the situation now in the Sahel, so like as a researcher, you are between two sides. So you have the terrorist groups who are here. You have also the government who are here. And in front of you, you have disinformation coming from all of the areas. So like from the terrorist group who has the propaganda on the social media, you have also the government who try to say everything is okay. So as a researcher, it is the difficult that my colleague said in their presentation now. So you don't know which is the real information from the ground. So it's from the terrorist group, it's from the government. And sometimes the population who maybe we can say you can get the good information from the population, but the population are afraid to say the truth, because the group terrorist is just an area here. And sometimes the government is here. Also, if you say that true is not acceptable for the government, that will be another difficulty with the authority in this country. I think this is
you will be in trouble.
yeah, that that is we wanted to say the situation in the Sahel. So the case of different country in the Sahel, we know now we have our colleague, a researcher and professor universities who are in the prison now. So other side also we have other side for the terrorist group. If you are researcher, professor, so you have a discussion, academic discussion, or you have intervention in television, and then when you finish, so you will have the trust from this groups from their side, and then to say you cannot move to go another area in Mali, like for you and Gao is never. So it's finished. You cannot move to go to Gao, to Tombouctou, or to area that sometimes they are we have this element or these people from terrorist groups who move there. So I can check just the chat. I think we have here maybe the question. Then directly I can okay. Okay, so if the people who are with us online, so you can send the question if you have the question here, because we have only 8 minutes, or say 7 minutes to conclude our session. So if you have a question, you can put on the chat. Angelica, if you have a comment, go ahead. If you have any comment for us.
Thank you. I haven't seen any questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, so a friendly reminder again to everyone watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them there. And also just a huge thanks if I can jump into all of you on the panel. I know it was a really big ask of you to do this whole session in English, and I really, really appreciate it. And of course, as you've all asked as well, we would be more than happy to share the presentations. So just send them over to me afterwards, and I will make sure that it reaches everyone here in the room and the attendants in the conference. I will jump off now and just leave it to the audience if there are any more questions. So please do write them either in the Q&A box or in the chat window, and we will allow our panelists a few final minutes to answer them and conclude their session. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, I think if you have 1 minute to add, like Professor Sogodogo or Usman or Professor Mariam, if you have 1 minute to conclude, and then I will, yeah, go ahead.
Just maybe one comment about the presentation from coming from Usman. It was so interesting because his work started in during this conflict, and as a PhD candidate, it was so difficult sometimes to access the field. And maybe if he have some strategy to share, it was difficult, but he did his thesis, basing maybe in by using. I'm not. I don't know. It's on him to tell us. Is he use specifically WhatsApp or Facebook? I don't know, or phone, to make some to maintain some contact with the village, with those participants who were living in Mali. I know he discussed with people from France, Italy, and so on.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sogodogo. I think we have just 4 minutes. Effectively, for me also, I was with Usman when he conducted his dissertation on the ground, because before we talk about the terrorism in central and north of Mali, but now I think all of Mali, on any region in Mali, we can say it's safe. So to move freely and go to anywhere, any area, and then to conduct like a research on this area. Okay, I think I have just to thank you. This is the tentative region for complex the method in which a researcher can use. This is on the chat that I am reading. Planning data collection. Okay, so the question is here is he asked about the methodology that we must adapt to collect data in this area, because he talked about the wrong data on the area, and sometimes we have a poor result. I think it's really for this. So if I allow me to answer for discussion, because we have just 3 minutes. In Sahel, we have this difficulty because sometimes, as I said, we don't have any information that we can say it's perfect information, and we can verify this information to say it's good. That we try to do in the Sahel is to try to get the contact. Is not the contact that we can say sometimes this information came from this person, because the situation we know the side of the government and the side of the terrorist groups. So I think we still in contact with the people to give us the information that maybe sometime we can verify this information. I think this is important things in the Sahel to get the good information. I will go directly to conclude in 2 minutes. That is to thank you for organizing this conference, and then to collect, if I can say, to bring the people from outside of your area to come with their experience, and then to share also this experience with you. So we say today we continue to talk about the data collector in the Sahel, especially in this situation that is as I said, which methodology we have to change every time to get a new methodology to continue. Thank you again for panelists, Professor Abdul Sogodogo, Professor Mariam, Dr. Usman, to be with us today and to share your experience with us. The last thing is the presentation, so I will share the presentation with Angelica, who will share the presentation with you to have more information about the situation in the Sahel. Angelica, thank you. We finish with our session.